Good evening. Welcome, one and all. I hope you've had a good 24 hours since we were together yesterday. Let me pull up the mantra for the evening. Here we go. So our 8th session, we're up to mantra 6 of the Isopanishad. Housekeeping once again, just to remind everyone to keep your video on, and for the moment your mic muted. I only talked for a little while and then always hope to get into some juicy discussion with you. So you're welcome to either type a question into the chat box or let me know you have a question, or once we get into discussion you can go live and give us your question then. Let's see, here we go, mantra 6. Let's begin with a recitation of this mantra from Sri Isopanishad. We'll do this line by line as we are in the habit of doing. Yastu sarvani bhutani. Let's recite that line together. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanu pashyati. Atmanyevanu pashyati. Sarvabhuteshu chatmanam. Sarvabhuteshu chatmanam. Tato na vijugupsate. Tato na vijugupsate. All right, and with the melody, it sounds like this. Yastu sarvani bhutani. Yastu sarvani bhutani. Atmanyevanu pashyati. Atmanyevanu pashyati. Sarvabhuteshu chatmanam.
Sarvabhuteshu manam
Tato na vijugupsate.
tato na vijugupsate.
Ya, he who, to, but. As for example, in the famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishnastu Bhagavan Svayam. In the context, the verses are describing many different devas and powerful natural forces. And then this verse comes, Krishnastu, but Krishna Bhagavan Svayam. So the word tu meaning but. Sarvani, all. Bhutani, living entities. Atmani, in relation to the Supreme Lord. Eva, only. Anupashyati, observes in a systematic way. Sarvabhuteshu, in every living being. Cha, and. Atmanam, the supersoul. Tata, thereafter. Na, not. Vijugupsate, hates anyone. Translation for mantra 6. He who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything or any being. So this is, of course, a major theme that we've been discussing throughout our examination of the Sri Isopanishad, that the symptom, the evidence that someone has begun to make spiritual progress is that they will lose their enmity for others. They will lose their greed and craving for things of this world. The fevers will abate, and one will begin to relate to others and to the world around us in a very different, more compassionate, more understanding way. I hope you're reading the commentaries to these verses because they're extraordinary. And in this particular commentary by Srila Prabhupada to the sixth mantra, he describes that this verse is giving a portrait of a Mahabhagavata. Now, the Bhakti texts provide frameworks for evaluating our spiritual progress. They provide frameworks in terms of personal qualities. They provide frameworks in terms of how much knowledge we are acquiring, framework in terms of how our time is being spent. There are many different barometers of spiritual progress. And one of those barometers, one of those structures is an ability to evaluate people in a compassionate way, but still objectively in three groupings. The first is called a uttama-adhikari, what we might describe as people who are setting out on their spiritual path and are sectarian in their understanding of religion. A uttama-adhikari is one who goes to a place of worship, whether it be a temple or a church or a mosque, and worships there according to family tradition, according to ritual guidelines. And the mentality of a uttama-adhikari is to think that God is present here in my place of worship and not elsewhere. And Kanishtas don't generally have the tools for accurately determining who is a true lover of God. We might describe these as either beginning, neophyte, even materialistic seekers or devotees, whose goal is generally on an elementary level, to get past the sufferings of the life and to achieve a better place. They have a vision of heaven or some environment where the distractions and pains of the everyday world go away. So it's a negative attraction to God, you might say, a moving away from an unhappy life. Sometimes when I think of myself as a young man, when I first met devotees and first met Prabhupada, I know for a fact I wasn't attracted because I had some deep philosophical understanding. I saw the devotees in London. This was in December of 1969 at the building near Oxford Street that George Harrison had rented as a temple for the devotees there. And I remember thinking, I like this better than what I've got. And that's a kind of Kanishta mentality. It's saying, this is better than that. And I'll be more comfortable here. So there was no really deep appreciation for what was going on. That came with time, that came with study, that came with a deeper awareness of what the world of devotion is all about. But that took some time. The second category, the second group that we're encouraged to consider are known as Madhyam-adhikari, the middle grade, if you will. Madhyam-adhikaris are able to discern differences in aspiring spiritualists, and they see four levels of living beings. They see the supreme being, who is worshipable. They see the sincere devotees of the Lord, whose company they seek to keep. They see innocent individuals who have no particular knowledge of God or their own spiritual identity. And towards such people, the Madhyam-adhikari feels compassion and wishes to extend a hand of knowledge and encouragement. And the fourth are what are described in the text as the atheists. Now, I'm going to come back to this in a moment. The Madhyam-adhikari behaves differently toward these different categories. Above the Kanishta-adhikari, above the Madhyama-adhikari, are the uttama-adhikaris who see everything in relationship with Krishna. Nothing is separate. They look at other people, no matter how little or how great their spiritual knowledge may be, and they say, this person is a better devotee than I am. This person at least is being true to his or her natural inclinations, where I, who ought to know better, am a thorough hypocrite. So they tend to see others as more advanced than themselves. That's not an attitude to be imitated. It's better to aspire to that Madhyama-adhikari range where we can have each other's company. Madhyama-adhikari wants the company of others who are on the same path in order to share realizations and to ask questions. Listen, I'm having a problem with this, Prabhu. How are you dealing with it? Can you tell me, have you ever encountered something like this for yourself, and what did you do? That's the value of this sangha that we're creating among Madhyama-adhikaris, that we can learn from one another. It does raise some questions, however. How do we know? Are our powers of assessing other individuals so astute, so precise, so accurate, that we can actually determine, oh, this person, this is someone who is of that category that should be avoided? Or this person, this is a very spiritually advanced individual, and I should keep this person's company as much as possible. We make mistakes, and I know from my own history, I've been practicing bhakti for 52 years now. I've made some really bad mistakes. I've misjudged people terribly. I've seen some individuals who seemed to be quite advanced in their spiritual life. They had a great command of scripture. They were, the word is pakka. They were first class. They were exemplary in their public appearance, you know, the way they behaved in groups and so on. And yet, afterwards, it turned out they were struggling terribly with some personal dilemma, and sometimes they even fell away, and I never saw them again. So I would misjudge someone as being too high. And then in other cases, I would misjudge someone as being too low. I would look at someone and say, boy, this person really doesn't have a clue what's going on. And then afterwards, I'd find out that they were the most selfless people you could ever imagine. I remember one person who was a yoga teacher who I didn't quite understand. When Hurricane Sandy hit, this person ended up just going out to the east end of Long Island and spending weeks helping people get out of homes where maybe they'd been trapped, bringing food, bringing relief. I was saying, my gosh, I never expected that kind of selflessness from this individual. I had totally misjudged them as being less than they actually were. So it's a question that I have, not only because from my own experience, I know that I can misjudge people, but also from a larger contextual framework. Is there a simple way to evaluate a quality? Can we make a realistic assessment of what is selfless? Let's take that word, selfless. Sometimes we find that we might have to be selfish in order to become selfless. We may have to give ourselves the attention we need first before we can go out and be of help to others. Or here's an example. When I mentioned the other day this book, Underland, by Robert McFarlane, where he talks about this network of cooperation among trees, through the root system, through the fungus that grows and connects through what are known as the hyphae, or these tiny little connecting tendrils between roots underground. I read a little bit more since we had that discussion and found that there are different schools of interpretation. One way of evaluating this cooperative spirit between trees is that it's almost like a free market system. The cooperation exists because I can get something from this other tree if I'm in need. I can exchange something that I might have in abundance that I don't really require for myself. And the evaluation that goes on in this exchange, this cooperative exchange, is not exactly charitable. Another school says that it is charitable, that this exchange of nutrition, this warning system that goes from one tree to another, takes place not because they're going to get something out of it, but because there is this natural inclination to help others. There's no clear opinion or conclusion about which perspective is the right one. Are we compassionate and charitable because it's our nature? Or are we that way because we're going to get something out of it? It's a little bit hard to know sometimes what our unconscious motives are for doing things. So I'm curious to know, and this was the question that I wanted to open up to the group this evening, how do you evaluate your own behavior? Do you find that you're able to assess accurately why you do what you do, or are you left wondering, what's my real motive? I'll give you one embarrassing example. I found myself once going into a coffee shop and wanting to leave a tip for the, what do you call them, a barista, the person who makes the coffees. So I waited until the person had turned away to make a coffee for someone else. I waited for that person to come back to the counter before I put my dollar bill in the jar, because I wanted them to know, well, look how good I am, that I'm giving you a tip, but I really need you to know that I did it. And I felt so embarrassed by that afterwards, saying, oh my gosh. Anyway, I'm just curious to know, there's one question from Laura that we'll come to afterwards, but I wonder whether anyone has some reflection on this of your own. How do you judge your progress spiritually? Can we accurately evaluate whether we are rising from the Kanishta plane to a true madhyam, middle grade level, or whether we're rising even higher? What are the criteria for knowing that? Have you had any insights, and what are they?
My only observation right now is, it seems, and it says in the Shastra too, that the nature of the material world is that we are bound to being like either food for something or taking food from something. Like we're always materially needing or taking. And it's interesting to me that sometimes we do have this this breakthrough, like this spiritual breakthrough, where we're able to be above that need to sort of just take from the world. So I guess my question is, or my statement is, that every once in a while I get little glimmers of being more altruistic than being selfish. And maybe that's a way to gauge some spiritual progress. But then again, I don't even know if the motivation of that altruism is necessarily 100% just. That motivation might also be from someplace else. I'm not sure. So. And my statement is that I'm confused.
Well, thank you for coming clean. I suspect there are other people on this discussion this evening who would feel the same way. I don't know myself half the time, if not more. Am I trying to be good because that's the way we are as living beings, or because that'll bring me some feeling, some selfish feeling of being good? It's interesting, in the Bhagavad Gita, the three gunas, or qualities of nature, described, goodness, passion, ignorance, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And even goodness is considered entangling. The anchor that comes with goodness is a feeling of superiority. That, oh, now I know, now I'm enlightened. Now I can go out and be, everything that I want to be because I've understood I'm an eternal soul. There are anchors to goodness as well. Other thoughts that anyone might like to offer here?
Yogesvara, I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
I think it is interesting that there are definitely examples of people that sacrifice themselves for the good of others. And that you can't say that, if somebody sacrifices their life for somebody else, that has to be coming from a higher place of because they're actually giving up their material life for somebody else. So, that's one example that I don't think you can contest.
Yeah. That Joseph Campbell story yesterday was an example of that. The policeman in Hawaii who grabbed the person about to fall over the railing to his death, and the policeman grabbed him at risk of his own life without any thinking. It was instinctive. There wasn't any calculating. Well, if I do this, I can do it without endangering myself, or I can go this far. He just, at the risk of his own life, went and saved the other person. So yeah, there can be moments like that, and we don't always know why. Here's a question. Let's see. This is from, who is this from? It's from Lara. Let's say, no, not from Jasmine. My internet doesn't support the video. I will type out what I think. I think we are both. We are altruistic and selfish. We are always both, I think. I'm not sure. I suspect that's true. There has to be something. There has to be some reward. Selflessness also needs to be able to give us some kind of a positive reward. Otherwise, why would we be selfless? Something has to be there. Perhaps the answer is that there are rewards that make sense and are harmless to others, and then there are rewards that carry great risk. I'm not sure myself sometimes. I go by intuition that this is what I've learned, this is what I know, and this feels right to me. It feels right to me that I should not be selfish. But then, am I doing it for that sense of satisfaction that I'm not being selfish? Hard to know. Someone else like to volunteer a suggestion?
I'm curious how this all relates to the corona situation, and what is the selfless thing to do in the corona situation, and this whole thing of us, sort of staying home, doing what we can or whatever. Like that's, as far as being selfless in the corona situation, it's I guess to steer clear, like, pretend we have it or whatever. I don't know. It made me think why this is the perfect time to really throw this discussion around. Mm-hmm. And what is the selfless thing to do, and what is it, Mm-hmm. So.
Jolie makes a comment here. If we are, she makes the distinction between reacting and responding. Reacting is like that policeman who just instinctively reacted. I have to save this person. Responding, she comments, is stopping and thinking about the result. Interesting distinction between the two. And also, I'm not sure that you're asking a very good question. What is the proper attitude? Well, maybe it's different for each individual. If you're a doctor, I just heard something on the news this morning that the Prime Minister of Ireland had been a doctor before going into politics. And because of the corona situation in Ireland, has gone back to the medical profession and is spending 1 day a week serving in hospitals. What an amazing thing. What an absolutely wonderful thing. Now, those of us who are not doctors, if we tried to do that, might cause more harm than good.
Right.
So an honest assessment of where we are, I think, is really important. Not pretending that we're higher in our spiritual realization than we really are. To be truly self-aware means to know I'm not a great soul. I'm not in the position to do what this other person can do, and that's fine. I remember Prabhupada when he was managing this international Krishna society movement, would sometimes very objectively go to someone and say, I think you need to stop doing what you're doing because this other person can do a better job and you're obviously struggling with it. Now, that wasn't putting somebody down. That was a realistic assessment that you have your dharma, you have your svadharma, you have the service that is appropriate to your skills, to your abilities, to your mentality, to your psychic disposition. And this person has her particular skills. So let's be realistic about it. That's an important quality, really important quality. And what I would encourage everyone to do, and this is, I guess, if I had an agenda here this evening, this is it. In my role as an instructor of Holocaust education, I'm obliged to go very, very deep into the language of Holocaust scholarship, so that there are very often redemptive messages that are leveled in a presentation of, let's say, actions inside the concentration camps that are not truly heroic, but we describe it in that way because we need to live with ourselves. I'll give you an example. I was approached by a group here on Long Island to help them make a documentary film about Holocaust survivors who have come to live here on Long Island. And I said, well, okay, show me something about what you want to do. And they sent me a promotional flyer that said, these men and women embody all that is noble in the human spirit. By having survived, they show us that the human will can overcome the greatest of obstacles. And okay, time out. These dozen or so people, they're the heroes. They're the people who have human spirit. What about the 6 million who didn't survive? They didn't have a will to live. They didn't have the human spirit. They didn't have a sense of the nobility of human life. We sometimes label things because on an unconscious level, we want to feel better about the way we are behaving. We want to be able to get up in the morning tomorrow and get on with our lives. So I would just encourage everyone to think carefully about the vocabulary of your spiritual practice. Phrases such as spiritual vision, dignity. These are words that fail to mitigate the realities of the challenges we confront every day of our life. So to be honest and careful in our definition of where we are on the spiritual path, I think those are some very useful tools. Let's see if we have time for one or two other comments or questions. Sandra writes, there's a wonderful article by Rachel Naomi Remen, I guess it's pronounced, called In the Service of Life, which compares fixing, helping, and serving. Not putting ourselves above someone else in our relationship with them. An interesting distinction there between fixing, helping, and serving. And are you still working with cancer victims?
Yes.
Okay, and you're teaching yoga?
And training teachers to work with people with cancer.
Okay.
So Rachel Naomi Remen's work is a big part of that, because when you're meeting someone with cancer, well, I myself have not had cancer, but even a teacher that has had cancer, every situation is different. And so to come at a person as if you want to fix them in, maybe you're trying to be really supportive, but when you come at another person in that way, I mean, that's what physicians do, and so you're getting into this other space of, well, what is healing for this person? What is curing this person?
Very good.
So you do have to be very careful about your language.
Good. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Offer service.
Yeah. So here's the bottom line in our 6th mantra of Sri Isopanishad. Be cautious about evaluating yourself as well as evaluating others, and go deeper inside the vocabulary of your spiritual practice. There's a rich vast treasure of knowledge behind these Sanskrit terms. And it's always a pleasure to be exploring these things with you. Thank you all very much for your participation again today. Please join me in the Vaishnava Pranam prayer. Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. I look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow evening. Thank you
Hare
for
Krishna.
your very
Thank
wonderful
you.
and insightful comments and questions.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Have a
Hare
good
Krishna.
evening. Hare Krishna. Bye-bye.